Top 5 week continues here. What do John Brown, Michael Gallup, Courtland Sutton, and DK Metcalf have in common? Guys, you can probably guess. What do they have in common, those four fellows?
High average depth of targets?
No, come on, man. What's the topic today? They were
all drafted in round 10 or later.
Well, after round 10, not round 10 or later. They're actually all drafted in round 11. Round 11 was really good last year, according to Fantasy Football Calculator, full PPR ADP. But after that, not so good. But, yeah, those guys, John Brown, Michael Gallup, Courtland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Tyrell Williams also after round 10. So we've got our top 5 wide receivers after round 10. Welcome to the show. You're hearing this on Wednesday. It's technically Tuesday, so I had a team name Tuesday. What did you think of Limp Bizkit Shenault?
No.
Ben, what did you think of Limp Bizkit Shenault?
I thought it was terrible. I thought it was absolutely just not even close to okay.
What is the thing that, like, what is there an album from Limp Bizkit that sounds like Shenault?
No, but
Laviska and Limp Bizkit don't sound alike, and then you're just throwing Shenault on there at the end.
They sound alike.
They both start with L. You got that part.
I'm tempted to do a Twitter poll. Do Limp Bizkit and Laviska sound alike? Yes, no, see results. See what happens there. All right, you know what? You each gave me 5 of them, so that was cool. We have 15 players to talk about today. Give me your favorite. Jamey, kick it off. Your favorite after round 10.
I got to remember the ones I sent you because I liked a lot of the ones that Ben gave you.
Okay, you sent me. Got it?
Yes. The favorite one that I sent you, Steve Sims. I like Steve Sims for Washington. I like the way he closed the year last year. I think he's going to play in the slot for Dwayne Haskins and be somebody that Scott Turner leans on, the offense coordinator for Washington. So he's somebody that I look for with a late round pick in mostly deeper leagues, but I don't have a problem with him if I need like a 5th or 6th receiver in PPR.
Heath?
It was really weird because I didn't send my list until the first 10 names had been submitted, and my top 5 highest ranked players after round 10 were all still available. So I like all these guys a lot, but Sterling Shepard will be mine. He was right around a 25% target share in the games that he was healthy last year. I think he has an excellent chance to be the Giants' #1 wide receiver this season. And there was a dip in inefficiency last year. He had a rookie quarterback. Daniel Jones should be better as a passer this year.
Where is he going after round 10? Because I didn't see that.
On NFC in the month of June, he is being drafted in round 11.
That's crazy. That's just amazing value.
Yeah, that's what I've been using too. NFC, if you just want to Google it, NFC, fantasy football ADP, and you can change the date range. So yeah, I'm just using June 1st on, and I'll just keep using that. Or maybe as we get, maybe I'll do like July 1st to July 15th or something once we get deeper into July. But yeah, that's what I've been using. In fact, I'm going to submit that right now. Get the ADP. Okay, so Sterling Shepard for Heath, Steven Sims, and Ben, you are now required to stay in the NFC East. Do you have an NFC East guy? You do, actually.
And he must have initials SS.
Yeah, that's going to be tougher. What do you got, Ben?
I got nothing. So I wrote you a list yesterday, and I wrote the top 5 in my ranks, and then other ones that I really liked at cost. I think if you say your favorite, for me, it's Laviska Shenault, who you led with. And Heath, you said none of the guys overlapped. He did overlap for us, or I threw him in as an honorable mention, and Alan Lazard, I believe.
I was just talking about your top 5. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Those are the next 5 I had ranked. Shenault goes a lot later. But I think Shenault has a really great opportunity to be the Jags' #2, and I don't think people really recognize it. It's kind of similar to the running back position we talked about recently. How many running backs are drafted in the top 2 rounds this year? So many more than several other years. Same thing happened with wide receiver this year. There was a lot of skill position players that went high in the draft. So I think Shenault's getting forgotten about because in rookie drafts, he started to go mid to late 2nd round. But in prior years, that would be like a 3rd or a 4th round receiver. This is a guy who went relatively high in the 2nd round. I think it was like 10 or 12 picks into the 2nd round. But he was like the 6th or 7th receiver off the board. So it's a little bit of like there's a little bit of a muted enthusiasm about him. But he was very good at Colorado, used a lot of different ways, used in the backfield in a Wildcat, racked up a bunch of rushing touchdowns, as well as not just making a lot of plays near the line of scrimmage, but also downfield. But what I really love, besides Gardner Minshew, who's the man, is D.D. Westbrook is now going to be 27 in November, which might shock you because he came in as a 24-year-old rookie, and he has not yet hit 750 yards as a former fourth-round pick. Pretty comfortably can say that guy is not going to be a star at any point in his career. Chris Conley, throughout most of his first stint with Kansas City, his first contract, was a player who would at times play tons of snaps but not draw a lot of targets. And even last year when he had his best year to date, he played all 16 games. He only had 90 total targets. He's not really a guy who gets open a ton and draws a ton of targets. I just don't think his competition between Westbrook and Conley for that number 2 role is going to stop him at all if he is as good as I think he is.
Okay, what the hell is so funny here?
Spectacular breakdown of one of my top 5 guys. Do you know what top 5 means? Like, how is one of your favorite guy after round 10 a guy that was not on your top 5 guys after round 10?
I was tired last night, man.
There's no way you're taking Sammy Watkins over Laviska Shenault.
What's that?
There's no way you're taking Sammy Watkins over Shenault.
I have him ranked higher, but yeah, you're right. There's no way I'm doing that.
Oh, Heath said Laviska Shenault did. Ben did not. Okay.
Right.
I wrote the next 5 guys
guy is on my
list. But my favorite, so I wrote, these are all guys that I like at cost. And Shenault you can get in a 14-team league. Me and Towers took him, I don't even know, 15th round or something. And it was like almost felt too early still. You don't have to – you can take him with your last pick.
Okay. So, by the way, if you had been clever and we had asked you for an NFC East wide receiver with the initials SS, you would have said Shashawn Shaction, who is on your list, actually. Right? You do like just not.
I like Deshaun Jackson, yeah.
It should have been Sammy Satkins from Nikhil Harry.
All right. So, we'll get into more probably right now, actually. Well, no, we have a couple of news items, and then we'll get back into the rest
Sammy
of the
Satkins is pretty good.
Yeah, that was better than Shashawn Shaction. Okay, so anyway, big news. Big news. CBS Sports, if you don't play on CBS Sports, we got the commissioner product. You got to pay for it. Fantasy baseball. Not this year. It's free. So find out why CBS leagues are just flat out better than all other leagues. I've played on all of them. CBS leagues are the best. So you can get our commissioner product for free this year. It's the site that's built for serious fantasy baseball players, and fantasy football for that matter. Provides all the tools you need to run the league run your league like the pros. Very customizable. Change the scoring however you want. We got to figure out exactly how we're running the league still, in terms of the ones I'm the commissioner of, but you can do so many different things. So check it out. Now's your chance to try it out. If you've never, wanted to do it before, it's free this year. Play some fantasy baseball, get on CBSSports.com. Now, you can watch us on YouTube. If you were watching us just now on YouTube, you would have seen Heath cracking up during the Laviska Shenault answer and me trying to figure out why. And you can just go to youtube.com/fantasyfootball today or check out our episode description. We have links to everything you need. We have links to Twitch. We have links to Facebook. We have links to YouTube, ways to follow us, our Twitter handles, and time codes, too. So if you're looking to skip around in the episode and find particular talking points, particular topics, I've got you covered in the time codes. All right. News and notes, just a couple items here. Matt Rule, head coach of the Panthers, was talking about Teddy Bridgewater, saying that he could throw downfield more. And he's been a pretty conservative quarterback, especially last year. But they've got Robbie Anderson, they got Curtis Samuel, they got DJ Moore. So more downfield throws for Teddy Bridgewater, Jamey. You think that's in order?
It just cracks me up when you hear these things. Like his job is to throw the ball. And now they're saying, well, he's going to throw the ball downfield. Oh, thank you. I mean, yes, let him throw the ball downfield. It may not be the best downfield thrower. He may not be the best downfield thrower. It may not be the prettiest deep ball that you're going to see, but I hope so. Why would you bring in Robbie Anderson? Why would you have Curtis Samuel? Why would you just want to keep DJ Moore in a box, essentially? You got to open things up, and so hopefully they let him do that.
Okay, and I talked about this on the Sunday night bonus pod and brought it up like, wow, what is Cam Newton's contract tell you about what the NFL thinks of Cam Newton? Well, we got a report today that New England was the only team to offer Cam Newton a contract. Does that change anything for you guys? Because you didn't really seem to care on the Sunday night show that, it took until almost July. He gets a 1-year deal. Wasn't a lot of interest around the league, it seems. Now you see this report that New England was the only team that offered Cam a contract. Does that matter, Ben? You were the most adamant that it did not seem to matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter for me because I think New England's different. And my hypothesis was New England had been in contact with him throughout. He was potentially holding out for, a more lucrative offer. New England didn't have the money to offer that. And that offer never materialized. Doesn't really matter. I think what matters is we can pretty much read that New England was willing to make this move and take this chance. And probably that was, like, as Jamey pointed out, the timing of the announcement being right when they got hit with sanctions. This was probably in the works for some time.
I would imagine any team that called his representation and said, we'd like to bring you in for a workout. If he had any contact with the Patriots already, he would said, we're waiting, or no, or, we're good. I mean, you don't know that happened, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did.
All right, let's get back to it. Let's get to our favorite wide receivers after round 10 in a 12-team league. So pick 121 and beyond. Heath, I'm gonna lump in 2 wide receivers for you: Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate. Both made your list. Shepard going 134th, Golden Tate about 20 picks later. I assume, you obviously like Shepard better, but talk about those 2 guys, Shepard and Tate.
Yeah, I just think, and like Tate could easily be the best wide receiver for the Giants. That's why I've got both of them on the list. But one of those guys I'd expect to at least be at 23% target share. I think the Giants would prefer to run the ball more this year, but I'm not sure that their defense or their quarterback will be good enough to do that. And then I don't mean that as a slight against Daniel Jones in that he's not going to be good for the passing game. It's just that he's probably going to turn the ball over a ton because he pretty much always has. I do think there's a chance with Shepard, a guy that's generally been around 8.5 yards per target. If he gets 120 targets, you're looking at a 1,000-yard wide receiver, and he has a good chance to lead them in touchdowns as well. He's always had a high catch rate, so he should be pretty good in PPR. All of the things I'm saying could go for Golden Tate. I mostly just prefer Shepard because he's still in his prime, and Tate's kind of moving towards the end of his career.
Ben, you are going to be so impressed with me. I was all about the ADOT this afternoon looking at Golden Tate. Do you see what's going on with Golden Tate's average depth of target? Much different than his Detroit days. He was usually around 6 yards ADOT with Detroit. It was like 9 with the Giants. He had not a career low, but one of his lowest catch rates, but one of his highest yards per catch. So he was a very different wide receiver. And 2 years in a row now. So it really changed when he got traded to Philadelphia. He hasn't been a high catch guy anymore. I mean, if people are sitting there thinking about Golden Tate as a PPR stud, I don't know if he is that anymore, but he still was on pace to have a really good year. But what do you make of that, Ben? The fact that he's changed. He's, not as he's running deeper routes.
9 is still quite a bit below league average for a receiver, which is right around 11. So he's still not like a downfield threat. And so to say that, he's running some deeper routes is true, but also I'm more concerned that his efficiency dipped as much as it did. Like his catch rate fell below 60%, and he still wasn't even at league average depth. Like that's kind of an issue. I just don't know if he even still has it anymore. He's going to be 32 in a month, and he doesn't really have the size that or even necessarily the track record that I think ages gracefully. So. We'll see. I mean, I agree with Heath. He could be a 20% target share guy, but I don't know that he has it anymore.
Okay, yeah, it's just when you look at his 16-game pace, it's almost 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns last year. And if you remove Week 5, which was his first game of the year after suspension with a brand new quarterback, he was terrible. The 16-game pace is even better than 1,000 yards. So he had a pretty solid year, Golden Tate, kind of quietly. He is the last Giants wide receiver off the board. Last question. I'll throw it to all of you. I'll let Jamey, you start. Darius Slayton, 100th overall. Sterling Shepard, 130th overall.
I would take Shepard. I think the thing with the Giants receivers and one other news item is there was video released on Monday of Evan Ingram running. First time that I think any of the Giants reporters have seen him running, or I guess any of us have seen him running. So that's a good sign that he's going to be hopefully healthy from the Liz Frank injury. And when you factor in Barkley, I mean, there are 5 pass catching options in this offense. So do you have the ability for any of these guys to be starting fantasy caliber players aside from Barkley and Ingram because of the positions that they play. I think Slayton has the highest ceiling of this group just based on what his downfield ability could be and what his touchdown potential could be. But Shepard, in my opinion, has the highest floor. So, I think if you're looking at it from what's the best route to play with the Giants receivers, you could say, okay, I'll take the last one, which would be Tate, who could put up good numbers. Who's the better of the two between Slayton and Shepard? And, format could matter, PPR versus non-PPR half. But if that's the difference, if it's 40-plus picks, then I'd rather have Shepard. But I think the swing for the fences play is probably Slayton after what he showed us last year.
Okay, Heath, it was about 30 picks, I think it was.
I'm sorry, 30 picks.
About 30 picks between Slayton and Shepard. I can't imagine you're taking Slayton there.
I will take Shepard about 30 picks before I'd take Darius Slayton. When Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate or Sterling Shepard or Evan Ingram, whenever two of those guys were healthy last year, Darius Slayton had like a 10% target share. He needed two of those guys to be out, and then he had like a 30% target share and had some monster games. But he didn't really get the football when they had even two guys healthy. They never had everybody healthy last year.
He was a productive
rookie.
rookie.
I can imagine though, if they have two receivers on the field, he's not one of the two.
He's the unique guy. I mean, the five players you named, Barkley, Ingram, Shepard, Tate, Slayton's going downfield, as Jamey said. So that's one thing you like about him. But, if you want to just look at the games that I've given this stat before, the games that Daniel Jones and those three wide receivers all played, Slayton did have the worst stats. Shepard and Tate were pretty even.
But he was a rookie. He was a later round rookie, and now he's going to have, not necessarily a whole offseason of work because of the weird offseason, but, young players get better. And Golden Tate's 1 year older. I don't think we should expect trends to be identical year over year in these types of situations. The thing that Slayton has going for him, and I would probably also take Shepard at cost, but the argument I would make for him is what Jamey said, that he's, the boom pick. If all of these targets are split pretty evenly, Slayton's the guy with the high ADOT. And, it's funny. You asked that question at the top of the show, and I said, what do they all have in common? Well, they all have downfield profiles. None of those guys got huge target shares because we're actually really pretty good at identifying players who will get high target shares. That's kind of a skill at the wide receiver position. And you don't really find guys late in drafts that get huge target shares. Maybe sometimes young breakouts like Terry McLaurin last year. But Courtland Sutton, I think, was just over 120. You mentioned John Brown. He was about 110, 115. DK Metcalf was right at 100 even targets. None of these guys were 130, 140 target guys that had good years. They were efficient because they had the downfield profile and they had the ability to put up big numbers if they were efficient because of that downfield profile. Slayton has that working for him if these targets are split, where he could put up better stats because of that.
I feel like Slayton is a poor man's Will Fuller. Hopefully not with the injury track record.
All right. Well, he missed 2 games. So he's got that. Yeah, it's kind of funny. The Giants actually, their 3 wide receivers all had 83 to 85 targets. Of course, Slayton played 14 games, Tate played 11, and Shepard had 10. But it was funny how that worked out. All right, let's get a few more names here. Why don't we just run through Heath's list, especially since it's shorter now that Ben stole one of Heath's guys. Alan Lazard was someone you mentioned, Heath, someone you like after round 10. Trying to buck a trend here of Green Bay, their second leading receiver 3 straight years has not had more than 660 yards. Is this the year we're going to get a second reliable option for the Packers?
I hope so. I mean, I think part of the reason for that is they've had these stretches where one guy emerges and then kind of disappears. And Alan Lazard, he only had 500 yards, 477 yards. He didn't even play until week 6 last year. He clearly had the trust of Aaron Rodgers almost immediately. Rodgers was fed up with those other wide receivers. Listen, what they're trying to do in terms of running the football more may not work really well in terms of him getting a ton of targets, but there's some upside there in terms of with Jimmy Graham not there. I don't know how many targets their tight ends are going to get. And I do think just giving him a full season of the type of production he was giving us last year makes him worth more than where he's being drafted.
What do you guys have him projected for?
I haven't hit Green Bay yet, but I am a little bit concerned. You're talking about and I love Lazard, And I think I've made that pretty obvious over the offseason for anyone who's been listening all offseason. He was a guy who had a really good production profile, didn't really get an opportunity coming out of college. He was a UDFA. It's kind of like the Tyler Johnson of the 2020 draft class. But now that he's gotten into a role, which is typically the hardest part for a UDFA, you got to look back at that production profile he had at Iowa State and be really optimistic. But my concern is you got a run-heavy offense and you have a really target-dominant number one. So where's the upside for him? You know, that's tough.
I've got him at 70 for 904.
Yeah,
I don't know how much better than that he can do. I agree with that. He feels like a high floor option, but I don't know how much better he can do.
Do you guys think that Devin Funchess could outperform him?
It's possible.
Realistically. Now, obviously, he could. But
If he scores a bunch of touchdowns.
I would be more encouraged if Jay Sternberger outperformed him.
Well, of course, because he's a tight end. Yeah.
Give us another option at that position.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, but we always say Funchess is a tight end, so maybe we should just change his eligibility. That would help. All right, two more. Well, do you want to talk about Shenault real quick, Heath?
I think Ben said virtually everything that could be said.
How would
Sorry, man. Sorry.
rather have Shenault or Lazard or Tate?
I would rather have Lazard, but I would take Shenault over Tate.
And the last one is Preston Williams, who, yes, was –
Shenault did it all for the nookie, right?
I was trying to make like he's going to look at some rookie records and be like, give me something to break.
True.
That would have been great.
Azer, I was just pulling this up real quick because I couldn't remember it, but Funchess signed for a one-year contract for $2.5 million, only $1 million guaranteed. That's a pretty limited contract. So that's
he
one
could get
no.
cut.
Yeah.
That's no good. Okay, Preston Williams, slightly better than Devontae Parker. Well, was he? Fantasy points, I'm not sure.
No, you should have just stopped right there and not even been talking about last year. He just is slightly better than Devontae Parker.
I don't know about that, but they have very similar stats in the 8 games Williams played.
He had more targets, more receptions, and more yards than Devontae Parker before he went down. I think Parker did have more touchdowns.
He won more. Let me burst your bubble, though. With Ryan Fitzpatrick, Parker had more targets. Rosen seemed to really love Preston Williams.
How many? What was the difference?
Pretty close, like 5 targets or something.
Okay. So I just think that, like, we've seen Devontae Parker fail for 4 seasons. And Preston Williams came in as a rookie and had more production than Parker before he got hurt. And all indications we have are that Preston Williams is on track to be ready for week 1. And even if Devontae Parker and Ryan Fitzpatrick have some sort of friendship, we don't know how long that Fitzpatrick's going to be the starting quarterback. So if I have to choose between Devontae Parker at the end of round 5, start of round 6, and Preston Williams in round 12, that's a pretty easy choice.
Jamey, thoughts on the Dolphins?
I generally avoid Devontae Parker for a lot of the things Heath said. I think for the Dolphins receivers, you want to have Ryan Fitzpatrick start the majority of the season because he is going to not care about coverage. He's going to throw into tight windows. He's going to give receivers options to succeed. He's done that throughout his career. But he also tends to favor one guy. And we'll see if that's going to be the case, if it's still going to be Parker, who he has a good rapport with, or Williams, who was, starting to build towards something before that ACL tear. And look, we still have to see that he's 100%. But if it is, I want a piece of the Dolphins passing game because they could be trailing, because they may still struggle to run the ball as we saw last year, even though the running back should be better. I think Williams in round 12 is probably the better bet to try and, see what you can get from that as opposed to maybe overpaying for Parker in round 5.
Yeah, and by the way, it was only 3 target difference in the 5 games that Ryan Fitzpatrick started.
Bubble, not burst.
What's that?
You didn't burst.
Bubble, not burst, but slightly burst. Slightly burst. It was still Parker.
Well, but like
+3.
Who knows how many snaps? Like there were games where Fitzpatrick and Rosen were playing half the game. There's just no
true. I did not chart like every snap with it because sometimes both quarterbacks played in certain games. So yeah, let's just call it even.
I just think Tua is not going to help these guys win. They'll have good games, but I just don't think he's the best thing for their receiving potential.
Everybody thinks Sterling Shepard is the best in this group. Shepard, Lazard, Tate, Preston Williams, and Shenault.
Of the guys that we talked about, yes, Ben had another guy that I like a lot, which is Anthony Miller. Again, I didn't know he's going that late after round 10, but he's somebody that I draft a lot of just because I think the opportunity's there. He played really well last year in the 5 games Taylor Gabriel was out. I don't think Ted Ginn and Riley Ridley are going to necessarily be significant factors in taking things away from what Miller should hopefully do. So I would take Shepard first, but Miller's right there for me.
What's so funny now, Heath?
Nothing.
I tell because Anthony Miller didn't even make Ben's final 5. That's
Well, I didn't know like which list I could take guys from, to not have the same guys.
Are we going to talk about Ben's top 5 at all, or should we just talk about all of his honorable mentions? Because it seems like he likes them.
I mean, I just cheat. Like, I did not follow the rules at all on this.
You know what it was? Is Ben felt left out from the running backs because Adam forgot to email him. So he's like, I'm just going to give you
I'm doing
every
2 for
receiver
this.
after round 10.
All right, cool. All right, so you know what? Ben's top 5 coming up next with Brandon Aiyuk, Nikhil Harry, and then some more veteran guys. Pretty interesting.
That are not actually in his top 5.
Who knows?
Those are my top 5 highest rank, and I also did my top 5 favorites.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll do the top 5 highest ranked.
Hell of a tease, Adam. Coming back guys.
Some names.
All right, yeah. 5 people when we come back. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
Every late round receiver.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, what do you like about Brandon Aiyuk?
I mean, he's very good after the catch in college and had some strong return production dating back to when he was in JUCO. And that fits the San Francisco offense very well. And now Deebo Samuel's dealing with a Jones fracture. We don't know if he'll be ready for week 1. And I think that would probably mean that Aiyuk will have to play something similar to that Deebo Samuel role right out of the gate. I already thought he was going to be a pretty significant part of this offense in Emmanuel Sanders' old role. But I think there's some chance that he comes out of the gate kind of firing in weeks 1 and 2 and has, pretty big impact right away, like we saw from, Terry McLaurin or Marquise Brown last year.
Would you rather have Brandon Aiyuk or Justin Jefferson, and how is it Aiyuk?
It's easily Aiyuk.
Nah, just kidding.
I mean, I like Jefferson a lot. I just don't know how he fits. And I think the 49ers will probably add some passing this year. I'm not sure how – I mean, the Vikings might have to too just because of game script. But, they're both lower volume offenses. But I just think Aiyuk's a better fit, and they'll scheme him in ways that make it easier on him to get some stats.
What is the most targets that a receiver has received since Kyle Shanahan's been in San Francisco?
It's a Pierre Garçon stat. Oh, in San Francisco. I got you.
Kittle. I'm sure it's Kittle.
No, a receiver.
Yeah.
Probably not much because there's been pockets of guys. Pettis.
Deebo had 81 last year. That was more than anybody had the year before. Marquise Goodwin got 105.
I would take Aiyuk over Jefferson if you told me right now that Samuel's starting on the PUP list. It's the unknown, because if Samuel is ready for week 1, he said he's going to be back in 10 weeks, and clearly the Jones fracture is something you got to keep an eye on because of the recurrence of injury. But if he's the guy there for the majority of the season, then he should be in the mix for the best rookie receiver and a potential maybe borderline fantasy starter. But depending on how much Samuel plays, that's the key.
The next 2 guys on Ben's list are Nikhil Harry and Mike Williams. And I think Harry is interesting to compare to Mike Williams, because Mike Williams, his rookie season, was actually worse than Harry's. He only had 95 yards, no touchdowns. He had 23 targets in 10 games. He dealt with injury. It was a completely lost season. And then he had 10 touchdowns the following year, but he only had 66 targets. But it was, 10 touchdowns. Then he had 1,000 yards in year 3, Mike Williams. But before we get to Mike Williams, let's talk about Nikhil Harry, who obviously was disappointing, but it's just a reminder not to give up on first-round pick rookie wide receivers, even if they're first-year or second-year wide receivers, I guess, in this case, if their rookie season doesn't go that well.
Yeah, and I think he's a really good fit with Cam Newton. We talked about this a little bit on Sunday, how Kelvin Benjamin had a huge rookie season and Devin Funchess had a breakout season as like an age 23-year-old. I think it was his 3rd year, but he was a very young rookie. And they're similar outside big type receivers. Both those guys are a little bigger bodied, but Nikhil Harry's a little thinner. He's more like an AJ Green type or a Devontae Parker type. But I think it's an interesting fit, and I think part of the reason that works with Cam is he's willing to take shots in the red zone and put balls high, and he has a high release point. And he'll throw those lasers that are elevated, and those big receivers can go up and get them. And I think I can just kind of see that fit really, really nicely with Nikhil Harry. So I'm starting to really come around now on Harry, who I already thought had the potential for a bounce back, much like you said, in the mold of Mike Williams. There's not much we can talk about with his rookie season, but he was a very good producer in college, was a worthwhile first-round pick, and the Patriots aren't going to give up on a guy that talented after 1 year. There's no way.
Jamey and Heath, who would you rather have, Mike Williams or Nikhil Harry?
At this point, I think if I needed a receiver, I would take Mike Williams. If I was just trying to play upside, I would take Nikhil Harry. But I would probably lean Harry either way.
Like they're at the stage of my rankings where I'm not even sure my ranking of them matters. They're not in my top 50. I've got Williams ranked higher. I'll say Williams. And I don't have anything against here. My whole thing, and I'm struggling with this with the Patriots offense. And I know Ben had tweeted something about this. They've behaved during the draft and this offseason like a team that wants to really be a power running defense team. And I don't think Julian Edelman's just going to like completely go away. And Cam threw it to his running backs plenty. I don't think they're changing the offense completely. So I just don't know how many targets are going to be there for Harry.
And I don't want to sound I don't want to pick on this guy, but man, like Tyrod Taylor is such a bummer to me for fantasy purposes. Just
the guy that fits with him best is Mike Williams. Taylor had the best receivers to play with Taylor were, didn't Sammy Watkins have a really good year with Tyrod Taylor?
Just him.
But he's literally never played with any other receivers. Like,
here's what I don't.
Can you name another player that he
played with? Robert Woods.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But you're right.
Landry for a couple games.
He didn't have great receivers. The thing is, like, the Sammy Watkins comparison, is interesting, but at the same time, isn't Tyrod Taylor like very conservative? Doesn't turn the ball over. Doesn't throw that much. The Bills ranked 31st or 32nd in the NFL in pass attempts.
But do you think
like the 3 years he started?
That's the thing that I struggle with Taylor is like, you think that was all Taylor?
Well,
somebody's calling runs or passes.
But they didn't have
a big percentage of that's Taylor.
They didn't have a great defense. They had a good defense. It's not like now where they have one of the best. They had about a middle of the pack scoring defense those 3 years. You're right. Like the Bills, they had LaShawn McCoy. Okay, he was basically a workhorse. But
there's a wild card with all this, though. It's Justin Herbert. We don't know if Mike Williams may thrive with Herbert. Just because of the young guy trying to give a big receiver an opportunity to make some contested catches. It could be the complete opposite, that he's going to shy away from those type of throws, and he also has an ability to run. So for Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Hunter Henry, the season could be dramatically different, depending on how many starts each guy makes. So it's so hard to say with all those guys and why Taylor's not ranked higher. I think we all would probably love to rank him higher with the hope that he's the starter for 16 games, but it would be, I think, at least for me, a downgrade for the receiving core. But just in these two comparisons, even if, and I think Heath's right, they're going to be very run dominant, but I could see Harry, 7-8 touchdowns still, not much more than 50 plus catches, because I do think the targets will be low, but some big playability too.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised when I looked at this NFC ADP. Hunter Henry, 97th. So that's I thought. And I'm sorry if that sounds like it's off topic, but I just think that like Keenan Allen 56th, Hunter Henry 97th, Mike Williams 124th. Maybe just people are pretty down.
And I'm not drafting any of those guys, even on their down ADPs. I'm not drafting Keenan Allen anywhere for these reasons that Jamey just said and you just said. They're not going to throw.
What about Mike Williams? He was on your list. You're not.
Mike Williams is the one Charger that I might end up with. I'm including Austin Eckler in that, who I love and who I had on a bunch of teams last year. And we've talked about him a lot. I'm just concerned about the pass volume. He's not going to catch 92 passes again, nowhere close to it, and his efficiency has to drop a ton. But we can talk about Austin Eckler another day. Mike Williams is the one guy I'm considering. There's a couple reasons why. One, his 18.2 average depth of target was, I think, 2.5 yards higher than any other player that had at least 75 targets last year. He was a wholly downfield, chuck it up and pray type player, and he made a lot of plays. He had over 20 yards per reception. He had over 1,000 yards, even though he only caught 49 balls. That doesn't necessarily need heavy volume to translate. The weird thing is he only caught 2 touchdowns. You just noted he caught 10 touchdowns the year before on 43 receptions. We know he can catch some touchdowns, and he's so cheap. That's the main point. But you guys are right about the volume. The Tyrod Taylor thing I also want to throw in here is he not only has a very high scramble rate, he has an extremely high sack rate. He tends to hold the ball and try to create plays in both of those elements. And basically a quarterback has 3 outcomes when they drop back to pass. Either they run, they get sacked, or they throw a pass. And so Taylor winds up with a really low percentage of pass attempts per drop back. So like he said, yes, some of it is play calling. They didn't call a lot of pass plays when he was with Greg Roman, but some of it is also just Taylor. When he drops back to pass, he's more likely than most any other quarterback to do one of those other 2 things, either take off and run or get sacked, then throw a pass. He's not more likely to do that than throw a pass, but more likely than other quarterbacks will be. But yeah, Williams is the one guy I think could pair with him. He's the one guy that's cheap enough that I think could have some touchdown luck bounce back. Doesn't need 100 targets at his massive downfield depth, and I think that pairs well with Taylor's ability to create time. And again, the sack rate indicates it, but there's going to be times where he doesn't get brought down. And then who's he going to look for? He's going to look downfield. I think some of those big plays could definitely be there for Williams. And I think he's just like he said, he's outside his top 50 receivers. I have him at like 45 still, but you could draft this guy. Again, another guy you can draft in the last round.
Well, I don't know about that. He's 123rd. I'm sorry, not to be a jerk, but that's 10th, 11th round. So
Okay.
You do have to make somewhat of it. It's still a late pick, but it's something of an investment. He goes right after Henry Ruggs and right before John Brown and Justin Jefferson. How do you guys feel about that for Mike Williams?
Sure.
I'm good with it.
I would rather have
Okay.
Brown, but
Too early for me, but I see it. One more thing with Harry. I don't know the rest of the schedule off the top of my head, but he's got 4 games against Tre'Davious White and Xavier Howard / Byron Jones, so that's not easy.
No.
And
That's a good
they
point.
have, I think they play the NFC West, which has Patrick Peterson and
Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen
Sherman.
Ramsey. That's right. I think they play them.
Sherman.
Somebody confirm that. Let's go to our next guys. For Ben. Ben, Sammy Watkins. Oh, let's lump these 2 veterans together. Sammy Watkins and Deshaun Jackson. Who do you like
Yeah,
better?
basically, they're just targets, guys. There's been some talk that Jackson could be the number 1 receiver for Philly. We don't know how healthy he'll be. Same with Watkins. There's some reason to believe that if he's their number 2 receiver for the Chiefs, I know he wasn't great all last year, but he did end up having a really good playoff run. He's going to crush value outside the 10th round. It's just a question of whether Nikhil Harry plays. For Jackson, it's a question of how much Jalen Reagor plays and how much the tight ends are involved. But if these guys are in roles that it looks like they might be in and they're able to stay healthy, they're both going to be just massive steals for as long as they're healthy.
Play
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson week 1 in every DFS lineup.
Yeah.
Playing the Redskins?
No, his week 1s, I was looking this up the other day. So 2016, he went 6 for 102 on 10 targets. 2017 was bad. 2018, he had 5 for 146 and 2 on 5 targets. And then last year, he had the big game against Washington.
Yeah. And that was it.
With
Yeah.
8 for 154 and 2.
yeah, Jackson's my favorite guy on Ben's list. Like the way they're talking in Philadelphia right now, and this may not be the way that it ends up, but there's some questions about whether Alshon's going to be ready for the start of the season. And they said, specifically talking about Jalen Reagor, that we're not going to have enough time on the field to teach him multiple positions. So in training camp, he's just going to learn to play behind Deshaun Jackson. So like I think Deshaun Jackson right now probably is the by far and away favorite to be the number 1 wide receiver on the Eagles week 1.
Look at
yesterday,
the last.
you guys crap all over DeAndre Swift. Today, Jalen Reagor. I mean, Dave's vacation is not going well for him.
All right, now look at the last 5 games, not including week 17 for Nikhil Harry. Arizona, Chargers, Rams, Dolphins, Bills. Good cornerbacks there.
That's the nice thing is if he has to worry about getting shadowed by anyone, that means he's done something more than what he's done so far. Like nobody's shadowing Nikhil Harry week 1.
Probably. Okay, Jamey, you got 5 guys as well. Delicious burger. Start with Hunter Renfro. You already gave us Steven Sims as a late round guy that you like. Steven Sims in his last 4 games had 230 yards and 4 touchdowns. Took advantage of McLaurin missing one of those games, but Hunter Renfro led the team. He missed 3 games, led the team in targets inside the 10, 12.3 yards per catch with a 69% catch rate. That was 11th best. That catch rate was the 11th best among wide receivers with at least 40 catches. So he had a pretty nice rookie season, and he did most of it, almost all of it, after like the first, 6-7 games. He did very little. So what do you see for Hunter Renfro? How would you compare him to, say, Mike Williams?
Well, Mike Williams has a much higher ceiling. I think Renfro will catch more passes, but he should not score as much and should definitely not have as many yards if things go right, even for both guys. But I think Renfro's role is defined. We'll see what they do. Heath mentioned this a lot, and I think it would be great for Ruggs if they put Ruggs inside more, and not necessarily just put him on the outside, put Tyrell on the outside and keep Renfro in the slot. But for what we've seen from Derek Carr, how he sort of morphed from a little bit more of a downfield thrower to more of an inside thrower under Gruden. I think Renfro will still be one of the more targeted receivers on this team, along with Waller, and we'll see with Ruggs. But I think if you're just looking for some cheap receptions, he's not a bad guy to take late. Again, better in anything PPR scoring. But he does catch everything. He did that at Clemson too. That's kind of what his MO is. He's just got great hands, and he finds a way to get open. We saw some big playability from last year. It was some broken plays that ended up with some, long touchdowns, but it wouldn't be surprised if he has 1 or 2 of those again this year. So I don't have a problem taking him, again, more PPR than non-PPR, but I don't have him ranked in my top 60. He's not somebody that I'm like actually targeting and outside of, drafts that go more than 16 rounds. He's really just more of a deep league target that I think could prove to be better than where he's being selected.
Okay, then let me ask you about your entire list and tell me, because I think, you were the last guy to give the 5 players you like. So
I was the last guy.
Oh, well, that's okay. Sorry, because Ben had 30 on his list, so Jamey had to go a little deeper.
Yeah.
How many of these guys are more than that? More than just deep league flyers? Hunter Renfro, Larry Fitzgerald, Denzel Mims, Steven Sims, Antonio Gandy-Golden.
I think the only guys I have ranked are Mims, Sims, and Gandy-Golden, but they're all toward the bottom. They're all after 50 for me. So, none that I'm like, I have to have these guys. But I do think, again, if you're talking in this range, for me, they're well beyond Lazard and Miller and Shenault and Shepard and those guys. But I'm looking at it from the standpoint of Renfro's role should be there. Fitzgerald's role should be there, even with Hopkins and Christian Kirk. Sims and Gandy-Golden are going to be on the field, at least I expect. Sims for sure. Gandy-Golden, I think, will be better than Kelvin Harmon. And Mims could be the best outside receiver for the Jets and maybe their best receiver overall, if Crowder doesn't, sort of dominate targets. But, they're all in situations where they should be prominent for their offenses.
Ben, who's your favorite?
I have the crappiest list of the 3 of us.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of do. The deepest list. Ben, Renfro, Fitzgerald, Mims, Sims, Gandy-Golden. Who's your favorite?
Probably Sims. I agree with Jamey leading it off with him too. And he hit on all the good points. End of the season, looked really good late in the year, and with Haskins, and I think has a very good shot to be their number 2 target this year.
Heath, your fave?
I like Sims as well. I need to get him actually into my rankings because I don't think he is right now, and that's my fault. But he'll be in there. And Mims is my favorite though, just because I do think that there's an opportunity for him to lead the Jets in touchdowns, and he can make some plays downfield.
So we should probably mention the rest of the guys that I named that JB wasn't allowed to name, don't you think?
Sure, go for it.
So I also had Anthony Miller and Shenault and Lazard, who Heath hit on. Paris Campbell, who I think is really interesting. Josh Reynolds, who's a really late option, could be the 3rd receiver for the Rams. And then whatever you feel about this person, Antonio Brown, he should be going a lot earlier than he is. He's trying to get back in the league. There's potential suspension. We don't know if there will be a suspension for sure. And if he signs with somebody, the Seahawks and Ravens have been linked to him. The Bucs have been throughout the offseason because of Brady. I mean, he's going to jump up 5 to 7 rounds in ADP right away.
I think the Bucs said no again today, right? This is like the second time they've said no.
Okay.
Reports that they've said
they
no.
keep trying to break up with him, and he's just not accepting no.
Right.
The answer. Brown's a good one, though.
Dave actually replied to the email and gave me his 5 favorite. Ready for Dave's? Deshaun Jackson, Steve Sims, Rashad Perryman, Anthony Miller, and Jalen Reagor. A lot of Steve Sims. You know what? That's a big takeaway from today's show.
Steve Sims.
So Adam, I feel like I mismanaged our dynasty team a little bit because I butchered the roster limits that we were allowed to have for the draft. So I had to trade Heath, Alan Lazard, and Tyrod Taylor to get some draft room. And then I had to cut Steve Sims. You'll appreciate it because we ended up with Justin Jefferson. But I had to cut Steve Sims, which I wasn't happy about.
He's still on the waiver wire, right?
No, Marone Berkson drafted him.
Did he? Oh, he drafted him? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the one that you all forgot. The big sleeper for 2020. Everybody sit down. His name is Paris Campbell.
I said him.
Ben
said him.
You said him. When did you say him?
You all forgot. This is my big sleeper, and he was just mentioned 5 minutes ago.
That was in section 15 through 20, subsection B.
Okay.
I mean, I was surprised that there was someone I hadn't mentioned yet, but unfortunately it was not so.
See, I think one thing that we can take away from this for people that are listening, and we're airing this on Wednesday, for people that are drafting in the Scott Fishbowl, these are great receivers in a 22-round draft. Absolutely great receivers. Every single one.
Do you guys like Paris Campbell better than Michael Pittman?
I do.
I like Pittman's upside better because I think he'll score more. But like Paris Campbell is, he may touch the ball more, but I just think he's more of a gadget player than he is a upside player.
I agree with the Pittman upside comment too. I just think Zach Pascal's actually like good, and they used him a lot last year. And just because they drafted Pittman, I don't necessarily think he won't play. They rotated receivers a lot last year. Reich was comfortable rotating. So I actually think what we're going to see from these guys is Hilton on one side on the outside and moving around, but mostly on the outside. And Pittman and Pascal kind of rotating in year one for Pittman. I think he's one of these guys that when you look at this depth chart is most hurt by the no off season. It's going to be hard for him to really crack in right away. Whereas Campbell has been with the team for the whole year and is more of a slot guy, has less competition there. And we know how much Phillip Rivers loved Keenan Allen. He could sneak up there in targets, but I agree with Jamey. He's going to be a low ADOT guy. It'd be a high reception profile, but I think he has more appeal and more stable of a role, I think.
Well, I'm going to buy into the sophomore receiver thing. These guys, they just sort of, they do a lot better than they do in their rookie seasons. It's been happening a lot. I think it's kind of a recent NFL trend. And, DJ Chark, Courtland Sutton, Michael Gallup, what do they all have in common? They were sophomores last year. So just keep that in mind. The year before, Chris Godwin was the number 26 wide receiver in fantasy. He was 55th in ADP. Kenny Golladay was 21st. He was 54th in ADP. So it's been happening. Let's read some emails. Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Joe from Indy. I'm listening to the Scott Fish podcast right now. People keep debating what to do with league fees if the season is canceled. I immediately pitched my league the idea of our $25 buy-in all go to our local toy drive if the season is canceled, and everyone immediately bought in that it's better idea. That's a better idea than fighting over most points versus most wins, etc. I think we can support that one.
100%.
Heath, do you know that after we got off the show, Adam thought that I was giving him $500 to join the league and that wasn't going to charity? So he's like, hey, did you send me my money yet? And I said, no, it's not going to you. It's
ridiculous. Just like complete lie.
I understand why he was confused, because Fantasy Cares raises money for Toys for Tots and Adam's cut.
Ben, are you aware I had to pay for Adam to get in the fishbowl?
No, I was not aware of that. No.
Yeah, so Adam's been reluctant to do it, and so we started the show yesterday with Adam saying that Scott told him that there's a spot available. So I said I would make a $500 donation to Fantasy Cares to get if Adam would agree on the spot to say yes, and of course he did.
But he thought that money was going to him.
No.
Yeah, after Adam was like, "Hey, where's my $500?" I said yes.
No, false. I promised Jamey that I would match 1% of that.
What kind of toys am I getting?
What's your favorite, Jamey? What's your favorite toy that your kids have that you enjoy actually?
That my kids have?
Yeah.
Oh man.
You have a Bop It? Because I'm just going to give you some ideas. Bop It is really fun.
I mean, my kids are at the point where the 2-year-old, they love Legos. So the 2-year-old is now graduated from Duplos to Legos, and even though it's not safe, so I don't encourage that. But no, they're into PlayStation now. You know, so they're playing video.
Really?
games.
That's easily the best toy for your kids. Buy them games and say it's for the kids, and then play it all the time. It's awesome.
The kids wake up in the morning and they say, "Dad, you were playing 2K NBA 2K again?"
That's what my quarantine has been as well.
Matt from Chicago. Hey, Ken, Christian, Gino, and Mark.
Jets quarterbacks?
Jets busts at quarterbacks. Yes.
Ooh.
Ken
O'Brien.
Yeah, he wasn't a bust.
I would say he was a bust.
No,
He wasn't great. He wasn't a first-round pick, but he was a bust.
I just read the Packers preview in your NFC North series and can't figure out why everyone is so down on Aaron Jones. I've landed him in the 4th round of 2 12-team dynasty startup leagues. I feel like I'm the only one still high on Aaron Jones. I understand his touchdowns are not sustainable. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well.
4th round's fine.
Yeah, startup dynasty, though. Not regular redraft.
I'm still fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. He's a very talented player.
The reason we're down on him is because in NFC, in the month of June, he's got an ADP of 13th overall.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I saw someone say that he was a steal at like 18th in a draft, and I was like, how was that?
Yeah, it's nothing against Aaron Jones, and I think he'll justify a third. I'm fine with him in the third in redraft, but not in the early second, the 1-2 turn.
In the draft we reviewed earlier this week, Liz Loza from Yahoo Sports took Aaron Jones at 17th overall. That's a redraft league, but
yep.
You know, if you think he's still going to be double-digit in touchdowns, which he could, you know, that's not a bad spot for him.
All right, this is from Lucas, from dear Andrew, Tom, and Toby.
Goats?
Andrew, Tom, and Toby.
Those are Spider-Man, right? Toby Maguire, and isn't the Andrew the new one?
Yep. No,
okay.
Andrew's the second one. Tom was the new one.
Okay.
All right, good job. I thought it was The Office.
Can I tell you guys that
Kobe, I'm sorry.
Spider-Man is my least favorite superhero?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
I think it's because I really got into the superhero movies with the Avengers, and every time he shows up in an Avenger movie, it's just kind of to be annoying.
He was definitely forced in Civil War. That was to preview the upcoming new Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Least favorite superhero.
My favorite?
No, I'm thinking like who's my least favorite?
Oh,
all of them, I'd say.
Ant-Man. We talked about this earlier this week.
Well, Ant-Man's a dumb character. I never saw the movie though, but it's just
Ant-Man is Adam Azer as a superhero.
Oh, okay. Well, then go Ant-Man. Here's the question. I don't know when to sell some of my bigger stars in Dynasty. I'm in a 12-team PPR Dynasty league. 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 flex spots. I've got Cooper, Hopkins, Landry, Gallup, and Cooks. Should I keep all 5 in case of injury or bye week, or try to go like combine 2 for them to upgrade into a better, younger flex player? I have Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery at running back.
You always want to trade a year early before a year late. I mean, that's the way I think of it. And I'm okay trading guys that are like Hopkins right now,
Yes.
Julio right now. I'm very okay trading those types of guys.
Landry for sure.
Yeah, the problem I was going to say was like the 2 guys that I'd really consider trading are kind of their values dinged right now because of injury concerns. Like I might just wait it out at the start of the year and hope one of those guys gets hot and then try to trade him.
Who, Cooks and Landry?
Right? Yeah, Landry's questionable for the start of the year, I think, still.
What you could try and do though is maybe package Julio and Landry or Hopkins and Landry and see if you get 3 or 4 players in return that can help.
Did he have Julio and Hopkins?
I didn't know
Julio. I was just referencing him.
You got to speak, Heath?
I said, I asked a question. Ben answered the question. Now you can ask and read another email if you'd like.
From Alec. What's up, dudes? This year, my league is going to try an additional point for 40-plus yard plays. Does this really move the needle? Are there any particular players to target to take advantage of this? He mentions Tyreek Hill. That's probably going to be the first player that comes to mind. 40-plus yard plays. Does this move the needle?
I bet Ben Gretsch loves this. I absolutely hate it.
I actually hate it.
Okay, good. It's an ADOT thing. Like it's a big play thing. These are your kind of guys.
Well, speaking of big plays, how did we go the whole show without referencing the birthday boy today?
Whose birthday?
Oh,
I don't know.
You don't know?
Dave?
It's
Not
the
me.
favorite player of our show.
Who?
It's AJ Brown's birthday today, man. Come on.
Now he just
Oh
lost a
my
little bit of value. Got another year. Ben doesn't like him as much anymore. He's old.
Yeah, he just ticked down a little bit, unfortunately.
Did you go
Ben took
golfing
him from-
today
he's not
for
around one
AJ
pick
Brown's
anymore.
birthday? What was I was gonna say something interesting. Oh, I decided while we were talking to Scott Fish the other day, I really am very against any reward for first downs. I think it's
You're wrong.
if you're gonna do it in addition to catches, I think it's pretty awful. I think it really puts a bigger gap between the elite players and the rest.
That's the point.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's
if you watched our Twitch on Tuesday night, you're going to hear Adam and Scott yell about that.
I'll tell him. Of course, that hasn't happened yet as we record this, but I'll tell him tonight. I think half point for first down is awful. I think you shouldn't do it. Everybody out there.
Heath, do you think there's a take that Adam could have that could get Scott like riled up? Because he's like the nicest person ever.
It would no, because like Adam's takes are innocently bad. I think there are some takes that could get Scott riled up, but it would have to be like mean to someone who has less power than Adam. And
Well, I mean, he got a little animated about the
Who would that-
Transformers comment.
yeah,
Oh no, it would have to be about the Vikings.
Ben, are you an Avengers guy?
I did not get into it as much. No, I was more. I don't know where I was going with that. I saw like some of the Iron Man movies early on, but I never really got into all the whole series.
All right, so you suck like Adam. Okay, good.
yep.
I think that Tony Stark is really annoying.
Oh my.
He's overly sarcastic. Like they need to tone it down with him. It's just like
You are the worst.
I liked the Iron Man ones. I mean,
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
I like that movie, but you're just a little annoying. Just like all right, I
There's
get
three
it.
of them, Adam. there's a lot of them.
He just talks too much. Who
I
like
saw a little
who
bit
am
of
I to say
Avengers.
that? By the way,
So your
What?
take from the Avengers is Tony Stark is annoying and it reminds you of Transformers.
yeah. By the way, I really like one of my guilty pleasure movies is the first Transformers. It is a horrible movie that I will watch every time it's on. It's extremely entertaining. I think we're done for the
It was
day.
annoying. Shia LaBeouf was annoying.
Oh my gosh, beyond annoying. Yeah, good call. And yeah, probably like you too, Adam. All right, so anyway, we're done. What's our top 5 tomorrow, Shaggy B?
That's a great
50.
question.
Yeah, nobody knows. What's the top 5 for Heath and Jamey?
No, we're
in the-
talking about the top
Bet.
5 players we're avoiding, and we should also mention
Oh,
the
I better
top
get my
5
list
movies you
first
hate.
before Ben.
I'm gonna name every player to avoid.
All right, top 5 players we're avoiding. Friday, we have top 5 patriotic movies plus a fantasy football top 5.
Are we really doing that?
Yeah, we're really doing it. Let's just do it.
Oh shucks, I'm off that show.
I'm taking Independence Day. That's my
You want to
one-on-one.
trade?
Independence Day, not a July 4th movie. We've already established on a previous show.
It's called Independence Day.
Yeah, it's falsely named. All right, we'll talk to you out
Die
there,
Hard.
everybody. Thanks so much for listening. See you later.
Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.